I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book, The Girl of Many Crowns, no other than Miss Deborah Morris.
Uh, Thank you for inviting me, Daniel. It's great to meet you.
Welcome to
And
Book 101. Yes, welcome to Book 101, Miss Deborah. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
I am a resident of Kansas City, Missouri now, but I am originally from San Diego, California. And this is my book, The Girl of Many Crowns. It was recently published in October, and it is about an ancestor of mine who was the first princess of France.
Wow, interesting indeed, Miss Deborah. So you one of the princesses or queens, uh,
A descendant.
descendant of the queens. So what is the significance of the title, The Girl of Many Crowns?
Well, this is about Judith, and she was the first princess of France, as I said. And at the age of 12, her father arranged a marriage for her to the 50-year-old King of Wessex. He was a widower.
Mhm.
She herself becomes widowed twice by the time she is 15. And then she decides, I'm not going to marry again. And her father says, Oh, yes, you will. It's all political. And there's a lot of politics, a lot of war, a lot of Vikings and plots and everything going on in the ninth century. But this young woman stood up and said, I will not marry again unless I choose to. So her father imprisons her in a castle. And then from there, we have, of course, a brave knight. His name is Baldwin Ironarm, and he helps her escape from that castle. And eventually, they become the founding couple of Belgium.
Oh, nice. So, Miss Deborah Morris, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. And we are looking forward for the prequel, sequel of this book. So, what motivates the runaway queen to flee her empire?
Well, the reason why she is leaving her father's palace is because she does not want to be forced into a third marriage. She
Hmm,
wants to marry somebody she wants to marry. And so that is where the romance begins.
certainly. So, how does the knight's loyalty to the queen shape the story?
It's very interesting because the knight has taken an oath of loyalty to the king, her father,
Oh, wow.
and he takes that very seriously. But he also took an oath that he would defend the king's family as well with his life. So now he is faced with a very difficult challenge, a very difficult question. Do I support the king or do I support the family in the form of his daughter by defending her against the king? And that is one of the questions that he has to decide and he has to wrestle with. In the meantime, it's a saga, really, of the family. So you see what's going on. You see the kingdom of France becoming a kingdom. You see it being attacked by Vikings. You see the struggles that her father has to try to hold his empire together. And he is surrounded by enemies in the form of his brother who wants to take part of his kingdom, in the form of Vikings, in the form of rebel lords within his own kingdom who are trying to overthrow him. And you see where his daughter fits into this whole scheme of trying to protect France, or Francia, as it was called. It is a book for somebody who loves history and who wants to become immersed in the 9th century and to feel what it really was like. I did a lot of research for this book, and it shows within the writing. I read 45 books on everything from how women gave birth in the 9th century to the Catholic Mass in the 9th century. I'm not Catholic myself, so I had to do a lot of research into that. And it couldn't be the modern Mass, it had to be the 9th century. How did they worship on their holidays? How did they, what was the latest invention in warfare, which happened to be the stirrup? To ride with stirrups was a game changer for them, because they could now fight from horseback and they could wield their swords with great power and not have to get off and fight. Everything from the food they ate to the jewelry they wore is all well researched. And it's interesting because men and women seem to react to the book very differently. The men seem to see it as an adventure novel, with the knight, Baldwin, as the protagonist. And the women seem to see it as a woman's novel where a young girl, learns to become, I would say, self-sufficient and courageous and stand up for her own self and her own future. And then, but it really is both their story, because they come together and create a future together.
So, Miss Deborah, how did you explore the freedom, destiny, rebellion in the central themes of the story?
The themes revealed themselves as I was doing the research. I was inspired by the courage that they had. I was amazed at the politics that were involved. In many ways, I saw similarities to the challenges that my own country that I live in uh, encounters right now. I saw at one point King Charles, Judith's father, is faced with the prospect of 5 different threats to his kingdom, possibly occurring all at the same time. And they do. And he almost goes under. The war almost completely takes over his kingdom. And I think, well, if we were to replace Vikings with, let's say, terrorists or cartels or, economic struggles, China, Russia, adversaries that we would face, and they all attacked at the same time, how would we deal with it? And so it's a book that has some very deep themes and resonates on many different levels. It is not a fluffy, light read. It is one that makes you think. And it is one that I've had many people say it's very inspiring to them and gives them courage. And best of all, I love a book that ends with a happy ending, and it does.
Certainly. So, Miss Deborah, let's talk about the characters and relationships. How does the queen's character evolve throughout the story?
It covers 7 years in her life. So she starts out as a young girl, 12 years old, facing a marriage to a much older man, not knowing much about life at all. And then being forced into a second marriage, finally realizing that she really is a pawn of several kings. And this is why she is a girl of many crowns, because she is heir to a crown as a princess of France. She becomes the first anointed queen of Wessex and the second queen of Wessex, too. And she gains her own property. She gains her own council. So she has a council of counselors. She starts to learn how to use power in a good way to help people. And then finally, she finds the courage to stand up to her father, the king, even though it meant possibly being imprisoned for the rest of her life if she had not escaped. But she is determined.
Certainly.
And then she and her knight in shining armor, if you will, are chased across Europe, and they have to go to Rome to plead their case before the Pope.
Nice. Nice story, Miss Deborah. So, how does the relationship devolve over time or develop over time?
In the book, Baldwin the knight is the first character you meet. He comes to serve at the palace. He's only 16, but he becomes the companion to Judith's younger brother, who is very close to Judith. And they interact on several different levels and finally become friends. But then she is married and is sent to another country. She's sent to Wessex. But their relationship develops then through finding out about each other. Then when she comes back, that's when their relationship truly develops into one of romance and mutual appreciation.
Mutual. As in mutual, people. So, Miss Deborah, what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their novel?
Well, the way I approached it, because it is an historical novel, and because I wanted it to be as accurate as possible, I followed the actual events. I took true events and I dramatized them. And then I filled in the gaps with whatever I needed to fill in with conversation and with some fun events that hunting, going hunting, showing sporting type events and holidays and things that they actually did during the 9th century. Um, For me, if I were to give someone advice, it would be to follow your heart. And if you are in love with a story, make sure that you don't leave that heart out as you are writing it. Make sure that it tells the story that you really want to tell in a manner that inspires people. Sometimes, I think sometimes we feel like we have to follow a certain format. And sometimes when you break the rules, it makes it even more interesting because people get tired of reading a book that follows a format. This book is unusual in that it is really told from three perspectives. One is Judith's, one is Baldwin's, and the third is the chief advisor of King Charles. So we can track what is happening throughout the family, throughout the kingdom, and we see all the events and what is happening at all times, and it goes year by year. It's for me too, I do not like books that just leave you hanging. So at the end of the book, I put an afterword that tells what happens to each of these characters. I will warn you that the names are a little difficult. It was difficult for me at first to keep track of some of them. So I have included a genealogical chart at the beginning of the book and also several maps throughout the book. So you can follow their various travels through France, or Francia as it was called then, down into Rome, over into England, or Wessex at the time. And I also, I think if you just keep reading, which is what everybody tells me, eventually the names don't bother you anymore. I mean,
Yes.
Athelwulf is the king of Wessex,
Yes.
but his sons are Athelbald, Athelbert, and Athelred, and Alfred the Great. But for a little while, you might say there's too many apples.
Too many apples. So, Miss Deborah,
Yes.
what will be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry.
What will be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Again, my short-term goal is I am working on a prequel. It's going to be about Judith's grandmother. She was named for her grandmother, who was the empress of the Holy Roman Empire. Her husband was Louis the Pious, the son of Charlemagne. And she was the second wife of Louis the Pious. And she was chosen from a large group of eligible females that were brought to the palace for Louis to choose his second wife from when his first wife died. And it's almost like a Cinderella type scenario. Unfortunately, once she married and started to have a son, her stepsons were not pleased that there was now a rival for part of the kingdom that they thought they had already decided was going to be split between them. So then they're trying to kill their younger stepbrother and throw Judith the Empress in prison and even their father in prison, and they start a civil war. And she has to be very smart and very courageous to save her son. And that son is King Charles. Judith, the younger Judith's father. So it kind of explains a lot of what's going on in The Girl of Many Crowns leading up to that time.
Interesting indeed, Miss Deborah. So, to wrap up our discussion for tonight, are there myth, prophecies, or legends within the story that foreshadow events?
I'm not sure if there are any of those. There are there are some very interesting correlations between Judith the grandmother and Judith the granddaughter, for sure. And both of them have to be very strong and very courageous women in order to survive the very dangerous times they were living in.
Interesting. Miss Deborah Morris, thank you so much for sharing your book to the world, The Girl of Many Crowns. And we are
Thank
hoping,
you, Daniel.
yes, and we are hoping for your sequel or prequel of the book. So, can you please invite our listeners to support The Girl of Many Crowns?
Yes, please write a review once you read it on
Yeah.
Amazon and leave it on Amazon. It'd be great.
Yes. Yes, people, let's support Miss Deborah Morris because if you support her, more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Deborah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Have a wonderful day. And to your readers as well.
More to come, people. See you soon.